The Rise and Fall of the House of Tudor, History of England. The Tudor dynasty has become the object of many historians' interest and media representations alike. Under the famous Tudor dynasty, England would most notably undergo religious changes that would both upset the public and the church. Though it resulted in many conflicts on the civilian level, it would also spark a new idea in England's public and political leaders. The idea of the separation of church and state would be planted during this time. With the tumultuous changes, the separation would seem inevitable and almost an easier option than keeping the two tethered. Of course, the true separation would not actually occur until much later in England's history. But with the leaders of the Tudor dynasty making drastic and modern changes to the religion of the country, it showed people that religion was not as rigid as they might have once believed, but in fact, a flexible and adaptable part of life. This would prove challenging with the church, but would also be a revolutionary idea, crucial for the development and evolution of England as a modern nation. Again, this was only proving that England was a nation ahead of its time. For the next several hundred years in England's history, this characteristic would hold true. The Tudor dynasty brought many changes to England, including a restructuring of the monarchy, the church, and religious and social customs. In totality, the Tudors would rule England for 118 years, through 5 monarchs, including the famous King Henry VIII and Queen Mary I, the first female monarch in English history. King Henry VII did not last long on the throne, his marriage with Elizabeth bearing 8 children, including his only surviving son, Henry VIII. When Henry VIII took the throne in 1509, England was officially entering a new era of unprecedented change. The second son in the Tudor family, Henry VIII, was originally destined for life in the clergy, but after being called to the throne out of necessity, the young king seemed born to rule and took to the newfound power quite naturally and willingly. Henry VIII brought a slew of changes to England, the first and perhaps most famous one being that of the church. Up until the 16th century, England had long been a Catholic country. The church was a governing body all on its own, and worked in tandem with the monarchy to devise the social and cultural structures of England. Henry VIII sought to change this, though, when his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, only bore him a daughter and no heir to the throne. Per the Catholic decrees, a man is only to take one wife, but Henry VIII created a loophole where there wasn't one before. With the supreme power of the English monarchy, Henry VIII rejected the Catholic Church and declared the Church of England his own creation, the official religion of England. In this new religion, he was the overseeing power, not the Pope, and marriage was seen through a more flexible lens. Henry VIII annulled his marriage to Catherine of Aragon, a custom not recognized in Catholic traditions, and found himself a new wife in the venture to find an heir. After 6 other marriages, Henry VIII finally found himself a male heir. While Henry VIII's creation of the Church of England allowed him to more freely make personal choices, benefiting him as an individual, it also altered England as a country on a broader spectrum. The Church of England, which would later be termed the Anglican Church, would eventually become the most popularly observed religion in England. It would also spread beyond Europe, reaching other countries, though none so completely as England itself. The religious change also altered the lives of common citizens. With the introduction of another church, suddenly religion was not quite as rigid as they'd initially believed it to be. The Church of England shared many values and customs with the Roman Catholic Church, but differed in that it adopted some of the ideals from the Protestant Reformation. It's considered more liberal in its beliefs and customs, allowing people more freedom with the customarily restrictive confines of religion. Henry VIII also emphasized the importance of military prowess and introduced changes to the English Navy. He is colloquially termed the father of the English Navy, birthing the acclaimed Navy that would prove nearly unstoppable in future conflicts and wars. When Henry VIII took the throne, he inherited a nearly non-existent navy with only 6 ships. By the end of his reign, the Royal Navy had 60 ships, equipped and docked along England's shoreline, prepared for any imminent battle. Today, the British Navy is regarded as one of the most formidable military organizations next to the United States military. Henry VIII is perhaps one of the most famous Tudors, but he is only the first in the lineage of the Tudor dynasty that brought change to England. Henry VIII's only son, Edward, was king for only a brief time before he died, leaving the Tudor monarchy scrambling for a solution. Henry VIII left behind only daughters, Mary, his first daughter, and Elizabeth, his second, to take the throne. Henry VIII's firstborn, Mary, won her right to the throne, making history as the first female monarch. As her first decree as queen, she reverted England back to Catholicism, disregarding her father's more democratic religion. If King Henry VIII's reign was shockingly progressive, then Queen Mary's reign was perilous in the name of tradition. A religious zealot, Queen Mary launched a campaign of religious persecution, executing over 300 Protestants, or as she termed them, heretics, during her reign and fracturing the religious sectors of England. It was through this crusade, known as the Marian persecutions, that Queen Mary earned her nickname Bloody Mary, and rightly so. Even if Queen Mary had not been a religious tyrant, she would have unfortunately still been disliked by the majority of the population, strictly on the basis of her gender. England was hesitant to embrace a female leader and, therefore, placed a greater emphasis on her marriage than they had on previous male monarchs. Upon Queen Mary's death with no heirs to her name, she elected her younger sister Elizabeth as the new Queen of England, continuing the Tudor dynasty and enacting a kind of normalcy in recognizing a female as a possible monarch. Queen Elizabeth I is heralded as one of the most successful monarchs in England's history, despite her rough introduction to the crown. A queen for 45 years, she was not welcomed as a new queen, facing similar discrimination as her sister had before her, with the addition of the scorched name of her mother, Anne Boleyn. Previous to King Henry VIII, children of anyone but the first wife were not considered prospects for the crown, but rather bastard children who were not given any title or possibility of excelling in social spheres. Furthermore, Anne was also considered distant from the crown and illegitimate due to Henry and Anne's divorce. With all that being said, Queen Elizabeth I was the first to deny this tradition and slowly earned a great deal of respect from her subjects by turning England again towards prosperity. She returned England to its Protestant roots and welcomed a more free population. It was under her reign that the English Renaissance occurred, leaving citizens with an overwhelmingly positive perception of Queen Elizabeth I. Having watched the criticism her sister had endured as a female monarch, Queen Elizabeth I won a reputation as the Virgin Queen due to her reluctance to marriage, fearing that she would lose her power if she married a man into the monarchy. It was under Queen Elizabeth I's rule that England became a colonial power. Queen Elizabeth I saw the importance of conquest and wanted to strengthen England's hold as an international power. Using the Royal Navy that her father created before her, Queen Elizabeth brought England into the Conquest game. Sir Walter Raleigh was a favorite sailor and soldier of Queen Elizabeth I, making him an excellent candidate for the conquest mission she was devising. The Queen saw how the Spanish were beginning to sail out to new lands, claiming new colonies for their own, and how this might become a threat to England. Not one to be shown up, Queen Elizabeth sent her own ships out to discover new lands, one of the most famous and successful being Sir Walter Raleigh's. If the name sounds familiar, it's most likely because it is tied to the colony of Roanoke, the Lost Colony. Though it has a rather disconcerting history, Roanoke was crucial in England's path to becoming a colonial power, making it one of England's first, comparatively, successful colonies, and paving the way for other conquests to come. Since she never married, Queen Elizabeth I didn't have any heirs to her name. When she died after her long reign, the Tudor dynasty officially ended. With the closing of the Tudor dynasty, England would find itself turning towards a new age once again.